shootout, and the United States survives in penalties, advancing to the semifinals over Canada. Herc, a crazy game. Where do you want to start breaking this one down?
Anywhere you want, Seb. I mean, I guess just overall impressions of the game was it was a miserable game. It wasn't a good 90 minutes of football by any means. Both teams actually started playing around the 80th minute. Would have saved everybody a lot of time, a hell of a lot of time, if they would have just let us know. 80 minutes of my life back. In between the boxes, non-operative. I forgot that Dane St. Clair, the Canadian goalkeeper, and Matt Turner, the U.S. men's national team goalkeeper, are actually playing in this game. You had lifeless, at times rough on the eye, without any idea or spirit. Again, in between the boxes. And then when it finally got into the boxes, it was very circumstantial. It was very sloppy. It was very nor here nor there. It was just a rough game to watch, just in general.
Yeah, I thought the first half especially was really rough. I don't know which broadcaster you were watching on. If you watched in Spanish on TUDN, Michele Giannone did a halftime hit after he just talked to BJ Callahan. He said Callahan was mad that he yelled at the team. That's not something we really expect from an interim manager, but he laid into him apparently. And I think there was some type of response, Herc, there in the second half. But you shot us a text to producer Beto and I right around a halfway point, and you were very upset with the American approach. What specifically did you not like?
Well, there's a few things I didn't like. For example, you have Jesus Ferreira there playing against a center-back team like the Canadian national team that are big, they're physical. They would love for you to just go out wide and launch crosses into a very, very undersized Jesus Ferreira. That is not his game. And what did the U.S. do? That's exactly what they did. I remember sending producer Beto a text. I'm like, is there any way we can get stats on the amount of crosses this team has sent in? And about 70th minute, he sent me one back that Stats and Info on ESPN had sent him a note that 16 crosses, only 4 of them were successful to Jesus Ferreira. Now, I understand having Julian Gressel there, If you have a Brandon Vasquez, Julian Gressel strikes a good ball. He whips in a good ball. Okay, you need to have somebody in the box who can be that target for him, not Jesus Ferreira. And if it's Jesus Ferreira, and you're going to go with Jesus Ferreira because he's a goal scorer and he's scored 6 goals for you this tournament, then it shouldn't be Julian. And if it's not Julian there, or Julian, Gressel, the other side of the field can be somebody who just tucks in, who likes to perform centrally, to allow the center back or the outside back to get beyond him. It can't be a player like Sendejas. I just felt the overall formation of this team or construction of the team against Canada played right into the hands of the Canadian national team.
I want to give Brandon Vasquez some love. He's obviously the goal scorer that kind of prolongs this game. And at one point, really, I think if you look at guys who have boosted their stock here, it's Brandon Vasquez. It's not just the goals he's getting. It's when he's getting them. It's the fact that he's getting them off the bench. I think the first player in Gold Cup history to score 3 goals in the same tournament off the bench. But Herc, what I found really interesting was that when Brandon Vasquez comes on, I assumed 100% it would be for Jesus Ferreira. Instead, Ferreira stays on, and we finally get a glimpse of Jesus Ferreira. I don't know if it was in a second 9 position or in the true 10, but in the position I'm assuming that is what you say is his best position, right? Where you want to see him. So what did you make of Jesus Ferreira when we finally saw him where everybody says is his best spot?
Yeah, I mean, it could be his best spot, but you put Brandon Vasquez in there and Julian Gressel's still in there and he's still launching crosses. So all you're doing is you're hoping that Jesus Ferreira can maybe somehow get on the end of those crosses. You're hoping that Jesus Ferreira can turn and create something. Jordi Mihailovic, a lot of fight, a lot of tracking back, a lot of ground cover, but not much to show for it on the offensive end, especially for a person or a player of his quality. It wasn't his night. You had other players. I thought Buzio was a little rough throughout the game. As well, DeJuan Jones had a beautiful ball in, but those type of actual plays, those type of actual balls in that are for a forward have a lot to offer in the term that all you have to do is attack it and you can see the frame. Few and far between. They were very hopeful into the box against a Canadian national team that just was content with sitting, content with defending. There wasn't a lot of creation, and that's been, honestly, for Greg Berhalter's team, because this still is Greg Berhalter's team, that's been their Achilles heel. When a team sits on them, sits back in bunkers, they're not creative enough. They don't know how to break teams down. Now, we saw the A team in the Nations League against Canada do that at times, but that Canadian team was also trying to press them, was trying to run with them. We've not seen them do that a lot of times, and especially this team, this A group, that's not their strength. They run in transition. They got players that are good in 1v1 situations, but when you force them to try to break you down through creativity, through associative play, they struggle, and I saw a lot of that tonight.
Herc, we've talked about this a lot. This is not the USA team, right? There's a lot of guys in this group who are probably not going to be on the 2026 squad, or at least right now you would say maybe best bet it's a 50-50. One of the guys who I think we do project to potentially be in that squad and have an important role is Miles Robinson at center back. Obviously, he gets away with one handball, but the second one is costly, potentially could have been what keeps this U.S. team from advancing. What did you make of Miles Robinson's performance, given the fact that we do potentially see him as an A-list player for this team?
Yeah, I thought those plays were circumstantial. Defensively, I thought the center backs didn't have much to do. Matt Turner didn't have much to do. Yeah, I mean, listen, yeah, it's circumstantial. One is a header that goes off your hand. There was a foul before it. What are you going to do? That's the game. You don't control where the ball goes if you're trying to attack a corner and defend. That's not what you do. And the other one, yes, that is a play where you have to be smart. The player's not going to turn on you. You've got help. You've got cover. You don't necessarily have to get that tight, that close. You can manage the game. That was a poorly managed play. But other than that, with the ball at his feet, I thought he was good. I thought he was good at progressing the ball. I thought he was good at actually finding players in space. But this was a game where, for the center backs at least, I thought it was easier than it should have been. And I thought out of the two center backs, if one of them struggled, that Jalen Neal at times got caught. But I think that's him being physically not at 100%. You got to remember, Jalen Neal, this is his first season as a professional, and I think in a tournament like this, you saw him hit a wall physically. You see the tape, the kinesio tape on both knees. He's a player that looked like he was struggling a bit physically, so I don't want to harp on him too much. But I thought out of the center backs, Miles Robinson was decent.
Hey, Herc, how good do you feel about the U.S. options off the bench? Because even before the game started, I was looking around, and there's not a ton of attacking options. If the U.S. got into a situation, and they did tonight where they needed a goal, there wasn't too much. You could bring on Cade Cowell, you could bring on Brendan Vasquez, but the player that they end up bringing on when they need a goal late is Christian Roldan, and this is not to attack Christian Roldan. He has his qualities for sure.
Yeah,
and they bring Jordan Morris on in the 90th. I mean, I think Jordan Morris is an attacking player, at least, whatever you want to say about him. Is Christian Roldan really the guy that you're going to bring on when you need a goal? If I'm BJ Callahan, I'm a little bit worried about my options when it comes to goals late in the game. If I need attack off the bench, that's maybe one spot we learned that the U.S. isn't as deep as they might need to be in this tournament.
I mean, we say that, and I think they've got the most goals in the tournament, right? But we're saying that because of the pool of players that we see the U.S. men's national team have. And we can sit here and criticize, but who else would they have put in? Think about this for a second. I mean, Cade Cowell comes on, Sendejas comes off, Julian Gressel comes off. You know, you have Morris on there, who I know people can say whatever they want about him, but he's got goal-scoring experience. He's actually, if you recall, the last time they played was 2017, the Gold Cup final. He scored the game-winning goal against Jamaica. Christian Roldan, for as small as he is, he's a player that gets on the end of things in Major League Soccer. He scores a lot of goals on set pieces, anticipates well. So it's difficult because we can go back and we could say they shouldn't have been on the squad. We should have picked. They should have picked somebody else, et cetera, et cetera. Now you're in this position. Who else could you have gone with? In theory, if you think about it, that's just the depth of this team that they brought. That's not really what worries me. What worries me is when a team like Canada, who I think is individually, talent-wise, limited in comparisons to what you have, can bring you down to their game, make it physical, make it a go toe-to-toe, make it a who has more heart, who has more will.
Who's that on, Herc? Is that on the players or the coach for
way.
allowing that to happen?
I think that's on both. First on BJ Callahan because that's his team, right? That's his squad. That's who he picked. And then it's on the players because you're on the field. What are you doing? You're representing yourself and you're representing your country, so that's on both of you. But they don't want to get into that type of game. You get into that type of game with Canada, it's going to be Canada all day, and it almost was Canada all day. I mean, they should have stole this 2-1, and not even steal. They should have won 2-1. If you think about this, if they manage this game well, and I know we could say the same thing about the U.S. men's national team, but you're in overtime, extra time, and they get a sensational goal like that, Schaffelberg scoring a goal like that, that's an injection of life for your team, and it immediately puts the opponent in this state of mind that the game is over. It should have been over. And yet you allowed the U.S. men's national team to come back. It's an own goal, it's circumstantial, but you allowed them to be in your box and find a way to come back into this game. That's not the type of game the U.S. men's national team wants to be in. You know, they want to prove their quality. I just think when you look at this team, you really do realize, and you shouldn't be upset, that this is the B team. This is what it is. It's not your A team. You can sit here and say, well, if Christian Pulisic was here, well, if you had Gio Reyna here, well, if you had Florian Balogun or Ricardo Pepi or whatever you want to say, this is who you have because you chose that way. Because U.S. Soccer told us that this was a second-rate tournament. This wasn't an important tournament. How did they tell us that? They told us that Greg Berhalter had bigger things to do, big-ticket items, Seb. The head coach of the U.S. men's national team couldn't coach this national team. So should we really be that surprised, and should fans really be that upset at almost losing to Canada?
Well, thank you very much for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for live streaming, premium content, and let's not forget as well, ESPN FC 7 days a week. Subscribe to ESPN+.